Due to the pandemic, Connecticut is down about 100,000 jobs, and that has created a looming housing crisis. Some tenants can't pay rent, so Governor Lamont is offering relief with a moratorium on evictions until the end of the year. But without rent coming in, many small landlords have been unable to make mortgage payments on their properties and face their own financial challenges.
These urgent problems will converge at the start of the new year as tenants, landlords, and lenders try to find their way forward. Joining us this morning, Robert Holzberg. He's a former Superior Court judge, now in private practice, who is assisting Connecticut Legal Services and counseling Connecticut tenants in distress.
Good morning, Your Honor. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Can you give us a sense of the scope of the problem?
I can. There is a looming catastrophe on our doorstep. Let me share with you, to begin with, some national figures. The Federal Reserve in Philadelphia recently completed a study that shows that nationally there is $9 billion at the end of the third quarter in arrearages, both as to rent and utilities, and that the average tenant nationally is in debt or in arrears up to $6,000, by an average of $6,000. Even assuming the numbers may be somewhat better in Connecticut than the national average, the scope of the problem is massive. And with the looming termination both of the CDC order, which prohibits the physical removal of tenants, and the lapse potentially of Governor Lamont's executive order, we have a converging crisis on January 1 that needs all of our attention.
So what should someone who's been unable to pay his or her rent prepare to do on January 1st when the moratorium expires?
Well, let me back up. First, the good news is that the judicial branch is not allowing any forcible removals of tenants until there's a hearing. So those are being scheduled. So that will at least give the tenant and the landlord the opportunity to have their day in court, so to speak, and to allow a judge to balance the equities. There is a modest program that is available, but I think it's actually being overrun. Governor Lamont and his excellent team created a $40 million fund. When I checked on the website yesterday, that they have stopped taking applications at the Department of Housing. That program allows up to $1,000 a month in rental assistance for 4 months, or a total of $4,000. So there's a possibility that there might be some assistance there, although I think that possibility is increasingly remote. I think tenants who are at risk need to try to reach out to the legal aid community, although they are overwhelmed. And finally, their last resort, of course, is where it always is, at the courthouse.
So Connecticut has standalone housing courts. They're not very big. Are they ready for the avalanche of cases that's likely to descend upon them?
I think, to the judicial branch's credit, it has been gearing up. It has recognized that this problem is coming around the corner, and they are holding hearings daily. They are scheduling them on all potential evictions. Obviously, during the COVID crisis, it's not as efficient. There's no in-person court hearings. It's being conducted remotely, just as we're talking to each other today. But at least there is a process in place. There are very sophisticated court mediation specialists who meet with both sides and try to resolve the case if possible.
We were speaking with Congressman Courtney earlier and talking about the COVID relief package in Washington. Is federal funding, to your knowledge, something that would help here?
It would help. The $40 million package that Governor Lamont has offered, has initiated, does have some federal funding. But there's no question that the answer to this problem, on the one hand, it's easy. It's more money infused quickly, both to tenants and landlords. The challenge, of course, is, both of you know from having covered the legislature for all these many years, having served there, is that there's going to be huge demands for funding support this year. So it's going to take all of the wisdom and creativity and ingenuity of our elected leaders to try to figure out how to provide some comfort and safety net, both to the tenants and to the landlords. I think Kevin mentioned that there may be a looming foreclosure crisis. There's a federal stay in effect. And This is a problem that affects both the landlords, although we often think about the tenant, but many landlords depend on the monthly rent checks to pay their utilities and their mortgages. And without that inflow of income, they're at risk of being put into foreclosure if that stay is lifted on January 1.
So I know you're not an economist, but if the state, landlords, tenants, mortgage lenders are unable to manage this crisis, what would the impact of large-scale bankruptcies be? Because bankruptcy is the ultimate safe harbor for all of these parties.
Yeah, well, the phrase that I've heard repeatedly as I've reached out today in preparation for speaking with you is a looming tsunami. And while it's true I'm not an economist, one can imagine just based on the national data of $9 billion of arrearages that the impact even in Connecticut will be profound, it'll be disturbing, and it'll be very hurtful.
Do you need more lawyers helping you there at Legal Services?
Yes, there's always a need. You know, the legal services community, of which it's where I started my career many, many years ago, is always needed of support. So if there are any lawyers listening today who would like to donate their services pro bono, that would be appreciated. There are wonderful legal aid organizations across the state, Greater Hartford Legal Aid, Connecticut Legal Services, New Haven, and they are being swamped, understandably, and they need all the help they can get.
And they will provide training, is that correct, for lawyers for whom this is not a specialty?
That's right. There are training programs with respect to eviction and housing court. So there is the support there. So Kevin, you can sign up too.
Okay, I'm good. He'll be doing that right after the show. Judge Holzberg, thank you. This is a really serious problem. We really appreciate you explaining it to us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, and that is it for this edition of Face the State. Coming up, CBS Sunday Morning.
Join us next Sunday when we'll invite more guests to face the state.